The atmosphere inside the NYU Stern School of Business crackled with electricity. Rumors had spread like wildfire over the past week that a very special guest would be delivering an open lecture. But no one, not even faculty insiders, expected him. Students murmured, journalists elbowed for front-row seats, and professors polished their introductions nervously. Then came the moment. The doors swung open. Security agents poured in. And behind them walked Barron William Trump, not just the youngest son of sitting U.S. President Donald J. Trump, but now an articulate 19-year-old NYU economics student with a mysterious mind and a calm confidence that silenced the crowd. The crowd hushed. This wasn't the lanky teenager they remembered from distant campaign trails. This was a composed, sharp-eyed young man in a tailored navy blue suit, holding a crisp dossier labeled, Tariffs, Trade, and Tomorrow, a New American Vision. No teleprompters. No media crew. Just a podium, a microphone, and Barron Trump. "Good morning," he began, his voice steady and mature. "Today, I'm not here as the president's son. I'm here as an American. A student. And someone who believes we are standing at the edge of a revolution in global economics if we have the courage to lead." Whispers gave way to awe. Cameras flashed. A few gasps erupted when he held up a freshly printed executive order, the one that had triggered headlines around the world, a 245% tariff on Chinese-manufactured goods, igniting a modern trade war between two global superpowers. "Let's be clear," Barron said. "The tariff isn't about punishing China. It's about resurrecting American production, reclaiming American dignity, and ensuring our children inherit a nation that builds, not just buys." His words echoed off the high auditorium walls. Professors looked at one another, stunned. Was this the same boy who had once shunned the spotlight? Barron pressed on, unfazed. "My father's administration made a bold move, one that many see as reckless, emotional, even dangerous. But today I want to show you the numbers. The logic. The vision behind this. And more importantly, what comes next." With a flourish, he tapped a digital panel. A 3D hologram sprang to life behind him, a complex trade map, dotted with interactive animations. Red zones highlighted dependency on foreign manufacturing. Green zones showed opportunity areas for domestic growth. It wasn't just impressive, it was futuristic. He had built the model with a group of NYU STEM students, integrating real-time trade data, AI forecasts, and job growth models powered by blockchain tech. The room shifted from skeptical to captivated. "This," he said, pointing at the hologram, "is why tariffs alone don't work unless you pair them with innovation. We're not just raising taxes, we're raising expectations of what America can be." Barron's speech wasn't partisan. It wasn't about left or right. It was about strategy. He explained that the tariff hike had three core goals. Rebuilding infrastructure, using new tax revenue to fund AI-driven smart factories in cities hardest hit by job loss. Innovation incentives, a wave of tax breaks for startups that replace Chinese imports with made-in-America solutions. Economic sovereignty, ensuring that essential sectors like pharmaceuticals, chips, and green energy are never again outsourced. The audience listened, enraptured. NYU finance students who had pre-written think pieces mocking the tariff were now deleting them mid-lecture. One even whispered, "He's smarter than any professor I've had." And then Barron paused. "I want to challenge every young American watching this. Would you rather inherit a paycheck or invent a future? This is our moonshot. And tariffs are just the launch pad." The room burst into applause. But Barron wasn't done yet. He closed with a prediction: within 24 months, China will retaliate. But by then, we won't be dependent on them. We'll have created a new American supply chain. One that doesn't bend. One that builds. And just like that, he stepped away. But the world was already changed. Within hours of Barron Trump's speech at NYU Stern, the global financial ecosystem jolted like tectonic plates shifting beneath the surface. Clips from the auditorium flooded social media. News anchors fumbled over their scripts as they tried to reconcile the familiar surname with a presentation that was more professor than politician. The phrase "tariffs are just the launch pad" trended worldwide, beating out celebrity scandals, tech unveilings, and even an ongoing NATO summit. But behind the screens, a much bigger storm was brewing. President Donald Trump sat in the Oval Office watching the live stream on a secure feed, flanked by his chief of staff and Treasury Secretary. For once, the commander-in-chief wasn't speaking, he was listening. "He nailed it," the president finally said, his voice low but proud. "This kid, he didn't just back me up, he moved the needle forward." Pam Bondi, now U.S. Attorney General, leaned in. "Sir, the markets are reacting. Positively. Wall Street expected a nosedive after the China tariffs, but this might stabilize it. President Trump nodded. Let's draft a follow-up address. Make it official. Barron's vision? It's now part of the administration's next stage economic plan. For the first time in years, a policy speech not from a cabinet member but from the president's son was set to directly shape the nation's economic agenda. Across the world, inside Zhongnanhai, the central headquarters of the Chinese Communist Party, officials stared grim-faced at screens showing Barron's economic map. President Xi Jinping's top economic advisor, Zhao Feng, frowned. We underestimated him. Completely. Tariff hikes we expected, another aide muttered. But this new tech-based domestic model, this is dangerous. They quickly convened an emergency session of the Politburo. Intelligence agents pulled every available file on Barron Trump. They expected to find a rich kid with a social media obsession. Instead, they discovered someone who had spent the last 3 years studying behavioral economics, AI supply chain logistics, and multilingual diplomacy behind closed doors. He has the youth, the intelligence, and the name, Zhao warned. He could be America's next economic weapon. Beijing immediately escalated their retaliation plans, announcing counter-tariffs on American-made aircraft parts, soybeans, and microchips. But the fear in their eyes betrayed them. They knew Barron had shifted the playing field. Wall Street whiplash. At Goldman Sachs headquarters in New York, traders stared at their dashboards in disbelief. What the hell just happened? One junior analyst muttered. We projected a 900-point dip. The Dow just went up 320 points. Financial experts scrambled to reassess. Barron's plan, though theoretical, had struck a rare chord. Vision plus clarity plus generational relevance. Investors, especially those in American robotics, smart manufacturing, and domestic AI platforms, suddenly saw opportunity instead of risk. Meanwhile, Nasdaq surged after news broke that Elon Musk had personally called Barron to request a private briefing. Kids got a mind for scale, Musk tweeted. Finally, someone who understands that tariffs are tools, not weapons. The think tanks and the media storm. Cable news hosts scrambled to keep up. Fox News hailed Barron as the young visionary America didn't see coming. CNN reluctantly admitted, regardless of your politics, this was a masterclass in policy framing. MSNBC's Chris Hayes even called it shockingly brilliant for a 19-year-old. Think tanks from Brookings to the Heritage Foundation began dissecting every syllable of his lecture. White papers were rushed, panels convened, and then something unexpected happened. Students across the country began hosting their own Future America forums. They modeled them after Barron's format, data-backed policy discussions, bipartisan dialogue, and bold solution crafting. What began as a speech had now ignited a youth-led policy movement. The CEO of a rising AI manufacturing startup in Austin, Texas, posted a now-famous LinkedIn message. Barron just handed us the roadmap. We're doubling our domestic production team this year. Let's make this real. Venture capital began flowing. A new tech and tariff fund launched on AngelList by the weekend, designed to accelerate startups aligned with Barron's three-point plan. Back at NYU, Barron sat quietly in his dorm room, watching the world react. He didn't gloat. He didn't post on X. He opened a notebook, wrote 2 words at the top, Phase 2, and began outlining what he knew had to come next. Because now the world was listening, and he had so much more to say. Barron Trump was never meant to be the face of a movement. That was never his intention. But history rarely asks permission before it selects its players. The morning after his NYU Stern speech, Barron sat down in a private think tank suite on the 24th floor of an undisclosed Manhattan high-rise. Around him were 14 of the most brilliant minds in America under the age of 25: coders, robotics engineers, young economists, logistics planners, and urban designers. No cameras, no media, just a massive touchscreen table and a shared goal. All right, Barron said. Let's talk about Phase 2. He pressed a button. The table illuminated with a blueprint called the New Frontier Act, a draft policy proposal designed to transform post-tariff America into the world's most resilient, self-sustaining innovation hub. This wasn't just theory anymore. It was action. The 4 pillars of Phase 2. Youth-led manufacturing incubators. Located in former Rust Belt cities like Cleveland, Detroit, and Pittsburgh, these federally backed hubs would fund high school and college students to launch small-scale manufacturing projects, 3D printing, modular electronics, bioplastics, and clean energy solutions. We build here again, Barron said, but with the tech of tomorrow, and the hands of the generation that will inherit it. American Flow Chain Blockchain System. A real-time supply chain tracker powered by AI and blockchain to replace outdated global tracking systems. We can't fight offshoring if we can't even track our own production. This gives us visibility from idea to inventory, said Maya Gonzalez, a 22-year-old Stanford grad and core architect of the plan. The Reverse Brain Drain Initiative. A government-sponsored program to bring home American talent from overseas by offering top-tier research grants and equity-based manufacturing partnerships. Thousands of our best minds are innovating in labs in Zurich, Tel Aviv, and Shanghai, Barron said. Why? Because they feel no purpose here. Let's give them one. Digital draft. The most controversial element, a voluntary national registry for young Americans with skills in coding, robotics, engineering, biotech, and cybersecurity. Those who join would receive federal startup grants, 5-year tax exemptions, and priority nation builder status, a new prestige ranking linked to contracts and public-private partnerships. The room sat in stunned silence. You're proposing a total rebuild, said Ronnie Lee, a Yale urban planner. Not just post-tariff economic adaptation, you want generational re-engineering. Yes, Barron nodded. Because the world will come after us now. China, the EU, the globalist elite, they'll hit us where it hurts. Logistics, currency manipulation, digital espionage. So we have to become untouchable. Anti-fragile. He looked around. Are you with me? One by one, heads nodded. Phones went off. Timetables were drawn. Codebases shared. And within 36 hours, Project Forge was born. A covert platform connecting over 500 innovation-focused student teams across the country, all operating under Barron's Phase 2 plan. But not everyone was clapping. A darkened room in Brussels flickered with satellite imagery and intercepted internal memos. Trump's kid is smarter than we thought, muttered a man in a blue suit with a heavy French accent. We cannot let this digital draft take off. It will position America a decade ahead. Elsewhere, inside a sleek, sterile room in Shenzhen, China's Ministry of State Security launched Operation Silencer, a multi-pronged cyber espionage mission targeting NYU servers, think tank databases, and Barron's inner circle. They weren't interested in stopping the tariffs anymore. Now, they were terrified of something else. America becoming completely independent of Chinese supply. Meanwhile, something extraordinary happened in the U.S. Elon Musk, Tim Cook, Peter Thiel, and even Jeff Bezos, figures often at odds with Trump, released a joint open letter praising Barron's initiative. This is what we've needed for decades. A generational blueprint, unshackled from red tape, driven by bold thinking. We stand ready to support Project Forge. Suddenly, Barron had Silicon Valley. He had Washington's ear, and he had the youth of America behind him. But now he had something else too. Targets on his back. And Phase 2? It was just beginning. As Project Forge expanded into high schools, colleges, and tech communities across America, the mainstream media could no longer ignore it or contain it. What began as a student-led initiative now held real policy weight. And that was dangerous for the establishment. Some praised it as a generational awakening. Others called it Trumpian nepotism on steroids. And in a move that shocked the nation, the House Committee on Economic Development summoned Barron Trump to testify before Congress. It was a tense, overcast morning in Washington, D.C. Barron, wearing a charcoal suit, slim black tie, and carrying nothing but a digital tablet, stepped out of a black SUV and walked calmly up the steps of the Capitol. No Secret Service detail, no father by his side, just quiet determination. Inside, members of Congress whispered. Some rolled their eyes. Others sharpened their knives. He was still just a 19-year-old, after all, or so they thought. C-SPAN's viewership broke records as millions tuned in across the country and across the world. NYU students gathered in packed auditoriums. Families in Indiana, Texas, and Ohio watched from home. Even Elon Musk live-streamed his reactions on X with the caption, "This should be interesting." betting he schools them. Chairwoman Abigail Monroe, a Democrat from Massachusetts, started with a cold smile. "Mr. Trump, welcome. Would you like to make an opening statement?" Barron adjusted the mic, looked straight ahead, and said calmly, "I'm not here as a politician. I'm not here as the president's son. I'm here as an American who believes we are living through an inflection point, one where the rules of globalization no longer serve our survival. You called me here to explain why I've rallied thousands of young minds to build what you wouldn't. So let's talk about that." The silence in the chamber was thunderous. Then came the barrage. Representative Jamal Reeves, a progressive from California, leaned in aggressively. "Mr. Trump, Project Forge circumvents federal labor regulations and operates without congressional oversight. Isn't this just a privatized Silicon Valley militia?" Barron didn't flinch. "No, Congressman. It's a decentralized innovation force. It's open source, transparent, and entirely voluntary. Our contributors earn equity, not favors. The only thing we've replaced is the bureaucracy that's been failing American workers for 30 years. Gasps echoed. A few claps, too. Then came Republican Representative Allison McGraw from Florida. "Mr. Trump, you've been called everything from boy genius to shadow czar. Do you coordinate with your father?" Barron smiled slightly. "We talk about tariffs. We talk about baseball. He supports my ideas, but I act independently. If that makes me a threat to the status quo, maybe the status quo needs rethinking." Even some Democrats chuckled. But the real fire came from Representative Lyle Patterson of Oregon. "Isn't this just another Trump stunt? You're 19. You haven't even voted in 2 elections. And yet you think you can redesign America's industrial policy." Barron leaned in, face calm but voice sharp. "Respectfully, Congressman, I'm not redesigning America's policy. I'm rescuing it from the people who've had a half-century head start and still failed." The room exploded. Even the stenographer paused for a moment, unsure whether to record claps or verbal jabs. As the hearing streamed live, social media ignited. The hashtags #Barron testifies, #Project Forge, and #Future is now trended for 48 hours straight. Major headlines followed. Fox News: Barron Trump silences Congress in fiery showdown. CNN: Unexpected eloquence. The president's son delivers real policy debate. BBC: A teenage technocrat? Barron Trump's ideas divide the West. Even critics admitted whether you loved him or hated him, he was a force now. That same night, something darker happened. The NYU Forge Hub servers were hacked by a sophisticated digital attack traced back to a Shanghai-based cyber unit tied to the Chinese military. Luckily, the Forge team had been prepared. Their decentralized blockchain architecture allowed them to reroute data in under 30 seconds. Still, it was a warning shot. Barron held a secure video call with key Project Forge leads. "They're going to keep trying," said Maya Gonzalez. "They don't fear the tariffs anymore. They fear the self-reliance." "We go faster," Barron replied. "This isn't just about tech or trade. It's about the soul of our country." It was the evening of July 4th. Fireworks sparkled across the Washington skyline. Patriotic songs echoed from the mall to the Manhattan rooftops. But something else pulsed through the air, something electric, historic. The White House announced a nationwide primetime broadcast, not from the president, but from his son, Barron Trump. America had never seen anything like it. The decision sparked wild speculation. Was this a campaign launch? An official endorsement? A soft power move? Even political enemies waited, wary but curious. At 8 p.m. sharp Eastern Time, the screens of more than 160 million Americans lit up. There was no music, no graphics. Just Barron standing at a podium on the steps of NYU Stern, flanked by student engineers, welders, AI coders, and robotics teams, young Americans from every background, every region. He looked straight into the camera. And he began. "Good evening, America. We've reached a moment unlike any in our history. A moment when decades of outsourcing, dependency, and complacency have collided with a new reality. For too long, we believed the future would be built somewhere else, by someone else. That era is over. My father enacted the tariffs to protect American production. But tariffs alone are not enough. It's not about shielding us, it's about challenging U.S. Tonight, I want to speak directly to every teenager who feels like they've been raised in a nation on the decline, to every young American who's been told we're a service economy now, that we don't build things anymore. They're wrong. In garages across Ohio, in repurposed factories in Michigan, on school campuses in Nevada, we are building a new America. Not with politics, but with purpose. Project Forge is no longer a prototype. It's a national movement. And as of today, we are launching the Forge Registry, open to any American between the ages of 15 and 30 who wants to contribute to our new industrial revolution. Coders, machinists, designers, welders, AI specialists, farmers, clean energy engineers. We don't care about your degree. We care about your drive. If you sign up, you'll gain access to our grant portal, mentorship programs, startup equity pools, and government contracts designed by us for us. This is our generation's declaration. A declaration that we will not outsource our destiny. That we will not allow America to become a museum to past greatness. That we will build here, now, together. Within 30 minutes, the Forge Registry website crashed under the weight of 4 million applications. By morning, universities began voluntarily shifting engineering curriculums to align with Project Forge standards. Tech companies pledged $6.8 billion in public-private partnerships to fuel its growth. President Donald Trump, watching the broadcast from the West Wing, simply smiled and said, "He's doing more for America than half of Congress ever has." Even critics fell silent. The Washington Post headline the next morning read, "A new industrial revolution, led by a teenager." And across the globe, tremors were felt. Beijing suspended trade talks, stating the United States has entered a period of radical economic nationalism. The EU panicked over youth drain, as hundreds of top-tier European engineers applied to relocate to Forge hubs in the US. Africa and South America saw their own Forge-inspired tech movements sprout overnight. Barron's message had struck a generational nerve everywhere. Weeks later, Congress passed the Forge Empowerment Act, a bipartisan bill allocating $180 billion toward youth innovation and domestic industrial infrastructure, with zero earmarks or political loopholes. Barron Trump didn't take a government salary. He refused a cabinet position. He simply returned to his Forge Command Center, a converted Ford auto plant in Detroit, where he and 400 other teens built everything from clean energy drones to AI predictive logistics software. He worked 12-hour days, ate cafeteria food, wore steel-toed boots, and by year's end, U.S. imports from China dropped 40%. Domestic production rose 33%, and youth unemployment fell to a 45-year low. Barron's quiet motto echoed on t-shirts, social media bios, and across every Forge hub. "We're not waiting to inherit America. We're rebuilding it now." He didn't run for office. He didn't write a memoir. But Barron Trump, through clarity, courage, and a refusal to accept decline, shocked the world. He proved that vision has no age, that resilience can be engineered, and that sometimes the quietest Trump in the room is the one who changes everything.